very sunny evening to the Town Hall for this evening's hustings for the role of Connétable. My name is Maurice Dubrow, and I live in St Helier Central. And we're in competition, I think, tonight here because I believe there's a hustings for deputies going on at Vote.je. So I'm delighted to see as many of you as are here. Let me welcome also the media who are sitting among you, and also the camera over here is filming this event on behalf of Vote.je, so there is a formal record. We're going to begin this evening with an opening statement or speech, presentation by each of the candidates. And before we began here this evening, I tossed a coin in true referee style, and Mr. Marc Le Chevalier came up heads and is going to start the proceedings. But before we do, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. This evening is a very important occasion. It's a contested election for St Helier's Connétable. And we have to reflect that however many you are here tonight, you represent, and the Connétable who is elected will be representing something like 35,800 people in the parish, living in just over 19,000 dwellings, and I gather there are about 17,500 people on the electoral roll. So you represent quite a small proportion of the total possible voting capacity of the parish. The opening presentations will last 5 minutes, and Patrice Gauthier is the timekeeper this evening, a guest from Brittany, and David Watts and Stephen Almondale will be handling the roving microphones when we get to questions from yourselves. We're all here to listen to the two candidates and to enable you to answer them, and hopefully as many questions as we can get through between now and 8:30. That's the sunset hour for us this evening. So I will endeavour to manage this for you so that we maximise the opportunity for you to participate in this hustings. And so without further ado, I'm going to ask everybody to make sure that you either switched off or turned off the sound of your phones, and we can begin. Marc Le Chevalier, would you please make your opening statement? And you have 5 minutes. There'll be a bell rung 10 seconds before the end to bring you to a close. Thank you.
10 seconds, is it? Can everybody hear me? Everybody hear me? Yeah? Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marc Le Chevalier. I was born in St Helier, where I currently reside with my wife and my 2 children. I'm an electrician by trade and an owner and director of 2 companies. Through the nature of my work, I regularly encounter parishioners' points of views regarding parish matters, and this influenced me in which to stand for constable. To be in a role where I can act upon people's concerns while endorsing my own qualities, skill sets and values. The role of constable is not only to look after the parish affairs and to meet parishioners' expectations, which would be my main priority, but to be a representative within the State's Assembly, in which I have no issues with making my voice heard and standing for what I believe in. I pride myself on being a proactive person and one that does not make empty promises. I'm an independent candidate and will not be joining a political party. If elected, my main focus would be to improve disability access and awareness within St Helier, with the hope to extend it island-wide. Address the realistic requirement for parking, which needs to be rebalanced. Increase the amount of activities and social areas for younger people to stop them from transgression. Improve communication and transparency within the parish by holding regular surgeries or meetings for parishioners and businesses to be vocal. I want all parishioners to be able to vote on parish proposals, not just those who attend in person at the town hall, and to approve upon the way complaints are currently handled and to ensure they are dealt with in a timely manner. Jersey has some worrying times ahead. I think this winter we'll see a lot of people financially struggling with energy costs and the cost of living forever increasing. And with this in mind, no, it would not be in my intentions to increase parish rates. I think we need to start supporting those people who need help. Since standing for election, I've been swamped with phone calls and emails from parishioners who have strongly expressed their views on poor bus services, hazarded roads and pavement services, general cleanliness of the streets, not enough parking and complaints not being addressed. If elected, I would be a proactive constable, someone who is approachable and is available 7 days a week. I will sympathise with the needs of others, and I want to raise morale within parish staffing and voluntary services. I will always support tradition, heritage and society as well as young people. I want to promote a diverse community and to see a broader spectrum of individuals representing the parish committees, such as more women, a wider age group enrolled on roads committees, to bien public and with honorary police, etc. My record demonstrates a passionate, self-driven advocacy for parishioners. I care about your interests and your voice. I will work tirelessly and to my best of my ability for you all, and I hope in return you will give me your vote of confidence. Thank you.
Simon Croker.
Good evening and thank you for attending. First, I want to thank the electors of St Helier for giving me the tremendous opportunity to be father of their parish for more than 20 years. I thank every parishioner who has contacted me with a question or a problem, for every brickbat as well as every bouquet. I thoroughly enjoy what I do for you, even when I can't do what you ask me to do, and when I have to share your frustration over red tape and bureaucracy. Ask any constable and they will agree with me that in terms of job satisfaction, being father and mother of the parish is off the scale, and the pleasure and pride I take in leading this parish is enormous. It's a great job to have, and therefore I'm not surprised that Mark wants to take it off me. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to set out what I've achieved since being elected, and also the chance to seek a fresh mandate. If I am re-elected and have had a contested election behind me, it will be less of an uphill struggle to ask the new Assembly to make a financial contribution to the cost of running the capital, for example, or to agree to double the size of the Millennium Town Park, or to delegate some administrative powers to the parish and pass some necessary legislation to create a Conseil Municipal. I also want to thank the team of professional staff and honorary members of the parish for doing such an incredible job of serving our parishioners. Our staff always give 100%, and I'm sure everyone here this evening or listening back will have their own example of excellent customer care from the parish of St Helier. But during the recent pandemic, they really did go the extra mile. If our long service awards and retirement parties are anything to go by, St Helier's staff love what they do and believe in its value, and it's not uncommon for them to spend their entire working lives, from apprentice to director, or to procurer in the case of the late Paddy Freely, working for St Helier. It's because of the people I work with and the people I work for that I want to continue working for St Helier. Not for another 2 decades, perhaps, but for a few more years at least. Until I know that there is someone waiting in the wings with the necessary knowledge and experience to take on what is an extremely challenging role, and with shoulders that are broad enough to bear the responsibilities involved. This election isn't a referendum about Broad Street or Midvale Road for that matter, which my opponent promises to review even though they're state's main roads. It's an election to decide whether to allow me to continue to fight St Helier's corner in the States, to resist government plans to build on our parks, government threats to remove our rights to car ownership, to allow me to continue to keep parish rates low, and with the help of our procurers, roads committee and other bodies, to continue to make our parish a vibrant place to live and work in and to visit. To allow me to continue my support of the senior citizens of the parish, the young people through our annual contribution to the St Helier Youth Trust, our veterans, and all the clubs and societies that we as a parish give a place to, including the Battle of Flowers. And at this point, I want to thank Angela, my wife, for designing the parish float for the past 10 years and for all her support. If things were going badly, I could understand why the electors would wish to see a change in Constable. After all, that's what happened in 2001 when I was elected, with parish rates on the rise, assemblies that got too large for this room, the budget slashed by £1.5 million by angry ratepayers in my first year in office. But things are not going badly in St Helier. We have healthy reserves, and in spite of the cost of living rises that are coming down the track, because of the cost of living rises that will be affecting parishioners and businesses, it is still my intention to propose at next month's rates assembly on Wednesday the 6th of July that we freeze the parish rate for the 9th year in a row. Of course, there are some major challenges ahead. On the environment, the parish has already made progress on its commitment to tackling climate change, but we need to do more. We need to reduce the amount of waste we create and recycle more of what we throw away. We need to continue to play our part in supporting the less well-off and people in difficulty through our community support officer and her team. I want to make sure the government honours its promises made following my 3 amendments to the state's decisions over the new hospital. If they must dig up Westmount Road, they will have to replace any trees that are lost, the green spaces and parking, and re-provide the Jersey Bowling Club. I will also press the states to agree to address the unfairness of the position of St Helier, whereby Coronation Park in St Lawrence, for example, is maintained at the cost of the taxpayer, while St Helier's parks are funded by you and me. I will continue to work towards a St Helier Country Park and press the Minister for Infrastructure to do something to make cycling and walking safer. We live in a thriving parish, and I ask for your support to continue representing you. Thank you.
Over to you, and I'm going to ask anyone who has a question to indicate in the usual way, and I will try and make sure I see everybody and get you in some sort of reasonable order. The objective tonight is to enable each of the candidates to have a 2-minute slot in which to answer any question, and I hope that we can, as I said earlier, get through and respond to all the questions that you have between you. So may I invite the first person who would like to ask a question? Yes, sir. There's a microphone coming shortly. It will be answered by Mark in the first case and Simon in the second case, and we'll alternate between them. And please ensure that your questions are addressed in a manner that both the candidates can answer them, not directed at only one of the candidates. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Fuller and I live at Cheapside. What are the candidates' views with the proposed super highway, with the loss of 160 parking spaces, 65 trees, the children's playground and the bowling club?
In my manifesto, I am wholeheartedly against where the hospital is going. I don't believe any of this should be taken away. I don't believe the highway should be put in place. I was told that one of the reasons why they were putting the highway in, going up West Mount, was to allow 2 buses to pass on the corner. I believe there's other routes that can go up there if the hospital is to go in that position. I don't think any of those trees should be lost, as all that park is people's land. I think it's just totally unfair of the way that it's been dealt with, and I think it needs to be looked at again.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler, for your question. As Mark says, the road improvements are unnecessary in my view and in the view of the St Helier Roads Committee. And the Roads Committee has been in the forefront of attempts to stop the madness. However, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the States has on 3 occasions debated this, and on each occasion I brought an amendment to safeguard the position of the parish should it go ahead. And on each occasion the States Assembly voted to support the creation of what you rightly call a superhighway. There is still a further step to be taken. The States has to pass legislation to transfer Westmount Road from parish to States ownership. That will be a debate which obviously, if I'm re-elected, I will be representing the parish and forcefully arguing that we should not be transferring the road. We should, if we have to build the hospital at Overdale, we should allow the traffic, see what happens, manage it in the way we do in Jersey, and then take any extra steps that are needed, which may be, for example, extra traffic lights and so on. But it is unnecessary, and I will continue to protect the interests of parishioners as best I can. Thank you.
Next question, please. Thank you. Microphone to my right, please. Gentleman in the checked shirt. And thank you for modelling how helpful the last question. If you could say your name and perhaps which district you're in.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Norman Delahaye, and I live on Westmount Road. So naturally, the Westmount Hill is of concern to me, as to many parishioners. I'm following on from the last question and the gentleman's answers. Would you therefore support, when the many options as to what should happen to Westmount Road were put forward, the second option was to do nothing whatsoever, and the issue about parking, buses parking, that can be overcome, as Mr. Chevalier said, by a one-way system. Would you therefore be happy to put that to the States, that you'd object completely to a superhighway and go forward with do nothing at all, but with things like a one-way system for buses and heavy trucks? That becomes all the problems, and perhaps Tower Hill becoming sort of residence, etc. But just might be a little titivating here and there, but generally leave things as they are. Doesn't matter what we do, we're going to have a lot more traffic, especially at Cheapside. We have to accept that, and I'm happy to accept that, but I do not accept this superhighway.
Simon?
Yeah, thanks for that follow-on question. I mean, it is absolutely right that any States member can bring a private member's bill or a proposition to the States. I think much will depend on who is elected Chief Minister. We know that one of the candidates has already declared her opposition to the hospital being at Overdale altogether. So I would anticipate there will be debates in the new House, in the new Assembly, about the hospital. But as I say, it will rather depend on whether certain senators get re-elected as deputies. I'm sure I don't need to give their names. I would absolutely take your suggestion on board. I would be happy to bring that proposition myself. But I do need to stress that the previous Assembly rejected exactly that proposition, that we have a one-way system instead of a superhighway. So it wouldn't be easy, but it's certainly worth doing again. It took 20 years for me to get the States to pay rates, and I brought umpteen propositions, and they were always rejected, but eventually, justice and fairness had its way. So the new composition of the States may well be willing to have a second look at a Jersey solution to Westmount Road. And for me, the loss of the lovely pergola as you walk up Westmount Road at this time of year, the loss of the bowling club, the loss of people's houses, the loss of the trees, the loss of the parking. The list goes on. And I have no idea why Senator Farnham didn't ask the Assembly to approve the hospital and say that we will look at the transport link further down the track, because I don't think it needs what we are planning. Thank you.
Mark, please.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. I've got to agree totally with Simon on this one. It's in no way, shape or form should it be going in a superhighway. I believe a one-way system could work, but it's going to be difficult if you're going to have a hospital up there, because then you've still got to get traffic coming back down either Tower Road or then come down onto Queen's Road. So either way, you're still going to have problems. As he said, if one set of people get into the government and they put their propositions forward, they're going to try and overturn the hospital and put it somewhere else, which is going to be a total waste of taxpayers' money. And I don't believe we should be doing that, even though there are better places for it, but I think we've wasted enough money. Again, it's not down to me or Simon. We can only put propositions forward and vote with them. But it's going to be a case of talking to the deputies and see what we can come up for the best plan possible for residents and parishioners alike.
Thank you. Would you like a supplementary? Could you make it short, please, not a speech?
I'm just asking for more one-way system. One way for heavy trucks and buses, but two-way for everybody else. Which is good.
Point of clarification, thank you. Could we move on to the third question, please? Mr. Pearce.
Thank you. Will the candidates give us their views on the island-wide states members' attitude that St Helier's green spaces, parks, long-established sports facilities, and the like are ripe as building sites to be covered in concrete so they can maintain the green countryside in the other 11 parishes? And bearing in mind that St Helier representatives will still be outnumbered in the new Assembly, let us know their ideas and intentions for dealing with this problem.
Mark, please.
Green spaces, yes. We need to keep green spaces as much as possible. Even if they are concreted over, we need to unconcrete them and put them to use for green spaces. For me to talk about what the deputies want, that's a very difficult question for me to answer because I don't know. All I can say is for myself, if I was elected, I would put propositions forward or to go against some of their things that they're going. So if they want to build on some of it, we need to keep as much green space as possible for mental health, people to play. Yes, I mean, where do we stop with it? I mean, we can't keep building in St Helier. We need other parishes to contribute to this, so we can bring in more space for our general public within St Helier.
Thank you. Simon?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I agree that we need to protect and increase our green spaces, particularly in the north of town where we're being promised 1,000 more homes in the next few years. And that's why I support the extension of the Millennium Town Park over the Jersey gas site. And I was disappointed in the Bridging Island plan that wasn't backed. It wasn't even backed by St Helier deputies. And the estates decided they would rather build a primary school there instead of doubling the size of the park. You can build a primary school in lots of locations around St Helier. You can only double the Millennium Town Park by extending it onto the Jersey gas site. And I will certainly be pressing the new states, if I'm re-elected, to do that, because that would make it a millennium project fit for the next millennium, and would properly give our young people in particular space to play. The questioner mentioned that we're outnumbered in the Assembly. He's quite right. The reason for the voted changes at the moment, which are very unpopular, it was to try to equalise the votes, and so St Helier will go from having 11 members in a 49-seat Assembly to having 14, which is an increase of 3. We should have 16 if we were going to have a third of the seats. But it's a bit ironic, I found as constable, when on some of these issues like protecting green space, I didn't even get the support of the St Helier deputies in the Assembly. And clearly, if I'm re-elected, that's something I'm going to have to work on to try and make sure that people elected by St Helier actually put the parish first. Thank you.
A question in the second row, please. If you could give your name and the district.
My name is Iris Fitz, and my question is, if the state's composition had changed this year to remove the constables, would you have stood as a deputy? Would you have still stood as a constable even if the constables were not in the States, or would you have chosen not to stand at all? Thank you very much.
Simon.
Thank you. When this matter was last the subject of a referendum, I got into a lot of hot water with the constables because I supported the removal of the automatic right of constables to sit in the Assembly, and the other 11 said that it should continue. There's a very simple reason why the constables shouldn't be in the States automatically, and that's because if they don't stand as a deputy, it skews the voter equity. So in St Mary, for example, the constable, when he or she votes, represents 1,800 people. When the constable of St Helier votes, they represent 18,000 people. And that means that the people in St Mary have more political power when their constable votes than the people in St Helier. And that is basic democracy. And so I do believe that constables should be elected by the parish as constable, and then they should go into a general election and earn a seat as a deputy of the States of Jersey. And I would quite support that being done on an island-wide basis, because I think we all agree, though we may hate to say it, that Guernsey got it right when they went for the island-wide vote. But I would like to see, as I say, an island-wide vote preceded by a vote for constable, perhaps 2 weeks before. And then we'd get people like some of the deputies who would quite like my job standing for constable, and if they didn't get it, they could still stand as deputy 2 weeks later. Thank you.
Mark?
To answer your question, I would still go for constable, as I am standing here for the parishioners of St Helier. I live in St Helier, and I'm very passionate about St Helier. There are a lot of things that can be done in St Helier to improve the lives of people within St Helier and the rest of the island-wide residents. That's the reason why I didn't go for deputy this year, because I wanted to be constable. Thank you.
Thank you. The fifth question, please. Thank you. At the back, on the left-hand side.
My name is Jean McLaughlin. I would like to ask, please, what is happening to our fort? Suddenly they're doing the gardens, which they have done. Have you any idea what's happening to the fort? Also La Folly Inn. And when we had the epidemic, people's health and their mental was in terrible condition because they were locked in, and they were saying we mustn't build any more flats. And what's going on? We're building more flats. Thank you.
Mark, please. Sorry, I didn't hear. The first part of the question is, what are they doing about the Fort region?
I can't actually answer that question because I'm not 100% sure, due to the fact that there's been so many different things that have been put forward for the fort. The last thing I heard was they wanted to put a casino up there, which I don't think is totally wrong. I think it should really be turned back into basically what it is up there at the moment. It should be for sports, music, dancing, all these sort of things, and it can have outside areas, gardens, it could, kids playgrounds, to make it it's such a big space up there. It can be used for so much more than what they're planning, or if a plan goes ahead. So if something does come through and it's not something that I like, but I would also try and get the parishioners' views on this as well, because if I was to be elected, I'll be putting your views forward. I just think that there could be so much done for it. And the second, what was the second part? Sorry. The folly in. It's been derelict for God knows how many years, as far back as I can remember. I didn't believe there was flats to be put on there, unless the ports had decided to put something. But if there is, I mean, we need to be looking at all these building projects with flats. I did ask an architect on why we're building so many instead of building proper houses for families for Jersey, which we really need to be looking at instead of building more flats.
Thank you. Simon.
Thank you, Jean, for your question. Fort Regent has been looked at by successive governments. What this government has done, perhaps which no government has done before, is they've thrown out all the sports uses of Fort Regent, and I know that at least some of them haven't got proper places to go to, and they're very unhappy about the changes. I think it's not entirely government's fault. They had a pandemic to cope with for nearly 2 years, so that's maybe one reason why the Chief Minister, who was very keen on the project, didn't do anything other than getting the gardens tidied up and plans submitted for a lift from Snow Hill Car Park, which probably are not going to get approved, although I'm not a planner. But clearly the fort is a tremendous asset for St Helier. We saw recently for the Jubilee lighting of the beacon how amazing the Glasses is as a space. I've been calling it the Glasses Field all my life, and I've been corrected by a parishioner. It's called the Glasses, apparently. But what an amazing space it is to be used for festivals and events. And I do hope that will continue, whatever else the next government decides to put on the fort. It's also a really important heritage asset. Jersey has some incredible castles, and people come to Jersey just to look at our castles. And it's not completely daft to suggest that Fort Regent could be restored as an 18th century fort, 18th, 19th century fort, which tourists could look at, as well as having some uses for parishioners. La Folie Inn is in the portfolio of Ports of Jersey, and I know they have plans for it, but it's a shame it's taking so long. And it does seem to be, Girls' College took the States 15 years to develop. I know you're going to ask me possibly about St Helier House, but there are good reasons why that hasn't been redeveloped. But I think it's really shameful that La Folie Inn is still empty when it was closed probably at least 15 years ago. Thank you.
And the sixth question, please. Sixth question. In the front, please.
Thank you.
Your name, please, and the district
You want me to speak? Yeah. Somebody else. It's Robert Weston from Old St John's Road. The Roads Committee last January passed a resolution to trial access to premises only on Old St John's Road for a 2-year trial period. That was 5 months ago now. And I would like to know if both candidates after the election will support and urge forward this matter as a matter of some urgency,
because in particular the proposed new approach road to Overdale Hospital is likely to exacerbate Old St John's Road as a rat run even more than it is now. Thank you.
Simon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. That's a good question. I don't want to do too much bashing of the government this evening, but the simple answer to your question is that the Roads Committee sent a request to the Minister for Infrastructure, who has to give approval before this signage can be put up, and we still haven't heard back. And that's despite my department chasing up for a response. So it's not through any sluggishness on the part of the parish. It is simply the machinery of government that is slowing everything down. And that's one of the reasons why I know parishioners have supported the idea of a St Helier Conseil Municipal, where the parish will be given certain powers to get on with things rather than having to wait for ministerial approval. If I had more than 2 minutes, I could tell you dozens of stories of how government delay prevents the Roads Committee and the parish as a whole from carrying out improvements that the parishioners want to see. I'm also fairly determined that the new Assembly should consider the use of technology in enforcement of these traffic restrictions. There's no point in having access to premises only if everybody keeps driving up it who is not going to a premises. And these things in Europe can be managed using number plate recognition technology. Newcut is another example. People come powering down there all day, even though they're not allowed to, causing a hazard to pedestrians. And it would only take vehicle number plate recognition technology to catch the people doing it and to discourage them from their malpractice. So I do want to see this take place, but it will require the government to get moving. Thank you.
Mark, please.
I'm in total favour of what you're asking. My dad used to live on that road, and it's always been a nightmare. And yes, it will probably get worse with the hospital. So I think we need to press the government on this situation to get it moving. It needs somebody. I know Simon's done a very good job at pushing all this sort of stuff through, but we need somebody within the new government who is actually going to act upon these concerns.
Thank you. Now, there was somebody who apparently I missed who wished to ask a question. Yes, Ms. McLaughlin, you have a supplementary or a clarification?
It was just the third question that I was asking. When we had the epidemic and people were locked in their homes and flats, and their mental health was not doing them any good, and they said we must not build any more flats because people have to have balconies and things. And what are we doing? I know we have a crisis with houses and people that haven't got homes, but the flats that we have are people, they're still going to be locked in if something like this happened again. So what do you think about this question, please?
The question is, what do you want to do about it?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Simon, would you do that? I beg your pardon. Mark, would you take that, please?
As I said before, regarding flats, I think we need to get away from building flats in St Helier completely. We need to be the other parishes to contribute building proper homes in the parishes. One, we have got a housing crisis. We need people to get onto the ladder. We also need proper family homes. These flats, unfortunately, can't house, not unless you're going to be spending what we're talking about, £700,000 to £800,000 for a family flat, which is totally barbaric. And I know for a fact I will never be able to afford a house like that, or a flat, I should say. I don't think we should be building any more flats. I think we need to stop outside investors getting hold of the flats. and actually give them to the people of Jersey. I think that may alleviate some of the problem, but unfortunately, how do we go about that now? It's very difficult, unfortunately. We also have a situation of people moving back to Jersey who are Jersey born and investing in flats because that's where the money is. So, I mean, to your answer to your question, to stop building flats, you know, I would totally agree with that, but then with the population problems that we have, we need spaces for them to stay. But I think we need to be looking at outside parishes to help contribute to the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. It comes up a great deal in the States Assembly, and my predecessor used to say often when in the States that St Helier had taken enough housing and now it was time for the rest of the island to take their share of the burden of housing. And I have to say that's a popular view, but it's not one that I share. And I don't share it for a number of reasons. First of all, if we can't build flats in town, then we'll have to build over field after field after field around the island. And as a person who lives in town, I want to be able to visit the Jersey coastline and countryside, which is kept in its fantastic state it is today. With making my second reference this evening to Guernsey, they made the mistake of allowing ribbon development across much of their island, and there's very little of Guernsey which is unspoiled. There's a lot of Jersey which is still green and beautiful. So St Helier is taking the flats, it's taking the accommodation in order to protect the rest of the island, not just for the people who live in St Mary, but for the benefit of the people who live in St Helier. And that's why I keep coming back to the fact that St Helier residents need cars. They need to be able to enjoy the rest of the island. They need to have parking spaces. Otherwise, they're being asked to take not only the accommodation, but also to become prisoners in their own homes. Flat dwelling, I don't believe the developers will be building them if there wasn't a need. And I know that people are downsizing. They're giving up their big homes in St Brelade and they're coming to live down on the waterfront because they like it. They think St Helier has got a real buzz and they want to live in town, and they're giving up their family home to families who would rather live in St Brelade. But of course there's a big cost issue there. The other thing I want to say is that the States has already agreed not to sell flats to outside investors. So that is something which you can no longer do. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Clarification, please. Could we have a microphone, please? Thanks, Robert.
The first speaker seemed to be implying that flats were not, quotes, proper homes. I think he should have an opportunity to just clarify whether he actually believes that flats are not proper homes.
That's a bit of a dodgy question, but Mark, would you clarify, please?
What I meant to say was I don't believe flats are a proper home for a 3 to 4 person family, due to the fact that they need space. You know, if you've got 2-3 children, you struggle in a flat. They need outside space. It's a proper home. You know, one of my family lives in a flat. They are proper homes, but for families, I don't believe they are a proper home to stay in.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to add it?
Yeah, because it gives me a chance just to amplify what I was saying. Clearly, families who live in a flat do need outside space. And that's why I'm so passionate about protecting People's Park from development and extending the town park, because these 1,000 flats that are promised for the north of town will only have balconies, nothing else. And people will need a really generous park for their children to play in. Thank you.
Right. Could I take the 8th question? Gentleman with the hand up, please.
Good evening. I think that this election...
Your name, please.
Stephen Beddoe, sorry.
Thank you.
I think at this election, the Jersey Development Company has escaped the glare of the public's scrutiny. And I'm very disappointed with what they put forward for the Southwest Master Plan. I think the location of a small 4-lane swimming pool where it is appalling. They haven't done enough to give back to the community to make it a great space. And I would welcome some consultation with them through the parish, and let's get a decent swimming pool down there, a Lido swimming pool, 8 lanes, 50 metres long, nearer the beach than it's currently located.
And your question, please.
Will the candidates push for greater consultation and scrutiny of what the Jersey Development Company is proposing on the Southwest Development?
Thank you. Simon?
Thank you, Mr. Beddoe. The Southwest Master Plan is one of those prestige projects that the outgoing government has been pursuing with tremendous gusto at the expense of putting money into what I call the Cinderella districts of St Helier. And I've criticised the Chief Minister and other ministers because they haven't prioritised the part of town that we all live in. And they've just been developing these colossal prestige projects on the waterfront. Having said that, if it's going ahead, I agree with you, there should be a really good swimming pool. I mean, it is the thing a lot of us are doing now, jumping in the sea during the winter. It's really good for us, and I recommend it. So I support a proper sized swimming pool on the waterfront. I also think we need a proper concert hall there, because when I think of our twin towns, they've all got fantastic concert halls. Even Bad Vilsack, which is a tiny town, has got a hall that they can feed 1,000 people. And we can only feed about 200 people in here. We need a proper concert hall in St Helier for conferences, for performances and things like that, really accessible on the waterfront. They're also going to build, I think, another 1,000 homes. And my big question is, will there be enough open space for those residents if this goes ahead? But it is early days. I know they have put in a planning application, but I cannot see that being determined by the next government. I think it's going to go back to the drawing board, and I agree with Mr. Beddoe that everybody should get much more consultation about what they actually build there. Thank you.
Mark, please.
Swimming pool, yes, Jersey is definitely in need, St Helier, sorry, I should say, is in need of a full-size swimming pool. The one that we have at the moment is subsidised by the states, which is due to be knocked down at some point with the new developments. So we need to put a full-size swimming pool there, as well as other entertainment, like Simon was saying, concert hall. I believe if it does go ahead, they will put plans in for an arts centre. But to answer, Steve, your question, yes, the swimming pool, we'd need to put in good consultation with the parishioners and with the Jersey Development Company to get this pushed forward.
Thank you. We're doing very well. Is there anyone else who would like a question? I saw the hand at the back first, and I'll come to you next. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Zach, live on La Chasse. What would the candidates do to help regenerate the town where it's quite dilapidated? For example, the recycling area around Snow Hill, the road parallel to Bond Street, I don't know the name of it, the many properties, which I believe multiple owned by the states, which are abandoned. And of course, any regeneration project which takes place and then gets reined in, I suppose, by the states, such as Half to Par, which ended up with just speed bumps, and all the other regeneration was taken away from the project.
Mark, please.
For the area of Bond, the street that you're talking about, I think it's a difficult one. If the states have owned the building or rent the building, then they are responsible for that building. We can push for areas to be regenerated, to make it look nice again. But again, that's down to the states. I mean, when you talk about the area down Halfday Park, they've just put new road surfaces. That was really for calming measures to stop the speeders down there, which was quite prevalent especially for business people down there. Excuse me. There does need to be a lot of places in St Helier that need to be regenerated or made to look a lot nicer. This is something that we can put forward to the states. I know they already are putting some areas of rejuvenation down Lamont Street, for instance. They've just had brand new flats down there, and they're trying to make it look nice. It just needs. We just need to regenerate a lot of places, and I can put propositions or talk to states members to hopefully get these things pushed through. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon, please.
Yeah, thanks. It's an excellent question. The States has a regeneration steering group, and as I was saying in my answer to the previous question, that has spent most of its time looking at prestigious projects like the waterfront, South Hill, and so on. But the Chief Minister has promised to allow the setting up of an urban task force, which I believe the Constable of St Helier should chair. And the parish has already approved, through the Roads Committee, 6 neighbourhood improvement areas where we want to see parish funding going into improving these streets, which have been not invested in for 25 years. The reference to half to power is very well made. It was nothing short of a disaster, really. The parish put the money forward for a village improvement scheme, which was worked on in consultation with the community. The day we published the findings of that scheme, the Minister for Infrastructure published his opposition to it. And that's why all we've had is a bit of tarmac. So we've been massively let down by the Minister. And if I sound like a broken record on the subject, it's because successive governments have appointed ministers for infrastructure who really don't care very much about St Helier. And that's why it's really important that the next government appoints somebody who's got vision and commitment and understands that St Helier needs to change and to improve. But regeneration is absolutely key, and the parish is certainly in the forefront of regeneration for the town. Thank you.
Very good. The gentleman in the second row, please.
Hi, Mike Graham. I live in Cheapside. Just wondered what both the candidates will do to save us old age pensioners from damage by cyclists using pavements, including the new electric scooters, which I understand are illegal if not being used on private property. So if somebody could just let me know how far they're willing to go to get this problem sorted out. Thank you.
I had you just answering the question about regeneration.
Oh, yes. So it's me to go first. Yeah, thank you for that question, Mike. Rogue cyclists are a complete nightmare, not just at Cheapside, but regularly they go racing through the precinct when it's crowded. It's really horrifying. I've had experience of my kids being hit by bicycles, and I'm surprised I haven't been hit yet myself. We do ask the States of Jersey Police to take action. And they do, in fairness, and we do see people in the magistrates' court from time to time being fined for cycling on the pavement, but there isn't any kind of consistent approach. And that's partly, of course, the infrastructure minister has failed to bring forward a cycling strategy, even though the parish sent him a draft strategy back in 2005. We've never even had that acknowledged. And the cycling strategy would include measures to make cyclists responsible for the way they behave. It would also provide safe cycling routes for our children. So we've been massively let down again by the states on that one. If we do create a St Helier Conseil or Town Council, I would expect that body of elected councillors to have the ability to pass bylaws so that, for example, if there's a rogue cyclist going through town and he's stopped or she's stopped, then their bicycle is confiscated. That would be a really good way to affect the performance of these people who ride in this way, because if they were to lose their expensive cycle or their expensive scooter, they might think twice about doing it again. So I do think the parish needs to be empowered to do more about cycling than we can simply waiting for the relevant minister to actually do something. Thank you.
Mark, please.
Yes, cyclists in general do get given a bad name, unfortunately, but there is a minority, I should say, of some that just cycle on pavements. They are a menace. It should be taught, I think, from a very early age that cycling on pavements is not allowed, and the use of electric scooters are illegal, and it needs to be clamped down on. I know the State's police, you know, they have a hard time. I don't think they've got enough staff to police this, but there does need to be a task force, you know, to monitor it. I believe that the honorary as well could help with this on certain days or certain nights. Even going through King Queen Street, you know, it's a problem. They're up and down there. I was sat at Bar Street. No, sorry, not Bar Street. I was sat at where the cows were, and I saw an electric scooter right down the street, crossed the zebra crossing, onto the pavement, and almost hit two people. It needs to be looked at. It needs to be stopped. And I think one of the ways to doing that is to find a person who's doing it and make an example. Because as soon as you do that, people go, oh, let's stop doing this. I think that's the only way you're going to get through to people, unfortunately. I know it's harsh, but the first few people who do it, it makes people realise that they... Sorry. It makes people realise that they cannot do it. Okay, thank you.
In addition to errant bicycles, maybe noisy motorcycles as well. The 11th question, please. Yes, the lady in the white sweater.
So just following on then from
Could you give us your name, please?
Oh, sorry, yes, Tamara.
Tamara.
Just following on then from the gentleman's question about cycling, there has been some argument that people have expressed about safety on the roads, which encourage cyclists maybe onto the pavement. I'd just like to know from both the candidates how or what they would do in order to make sure that St Helier is safe, so that cyclists feel like they can ride around St Helier uninhibited from any vehicles or you know, from so that they can feel safer, basically.
So that's safe for all users, including cyclists.
Yeah.
Right, Mark, please.
They've just brought out a new section in the Highway Code regarding cyclists and motorists and also pedestrians. Motorists have to give ample way for cyclists. Pedestrians now have right of way. And I think this needs to be put out there so that people understand that this is in place to make people more aware. I think there was I remember an article, a news article, that somebody went out, a reporter went out and asked certain people, and not many people knew of this. I think it needs to be addressed, and we need to get as many people to know as possible, and this should hopefully bring the roads, pavements more safer for people to move around in St Helier. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's important in this debate, which is so often used to penalise all cyclists, to remember that there's a minority of cyclists who cycle dangerously, and I suspect that the same people, if you put them behind the wheel of a car, they're really dangerous as well. They simply don't care about other people, they're antisocial, and they do need to be brought to book. And I do believe that the police does a lot to tackle this kind of behaviour. We saw in the press just today a driver who'd been going around the green lanes at 80 miles an hour has gone to prison, and that's a good thing, and that will begin to tackle the menace of speeding around the island. But we do need a network of safe, ideally segregated cycleways in St Helier. We have them coming in from the west, but then we dump the cyclists on the waterfront and expect them to push the bike more or less to where they're going. And if I want to cycle from my house for a swim at Havre Par Pool, for example, I need to take a map and almost I need satellite technology to do it legally. It is such a difficult journey on a bicycle. And we've got a town which is really not very cycling friendly. And that's part of the reason why cyclists are riding where they shouldn't. I don't condone it, but I go back to the fact that there is no cycling strategy for town or for the island, because no minister in the last 15 or so years has taken it upon themselves to create one. Maybe St Helier will have to do it for them, and that's something perhaps that the next constable with the Roads Committee could consider doing. Thank you.
Mark. Go ahead. Sorry? Yes, absolutely. It's your turn. Please. I saw just two separate questions, but okay, fair enough. Next question for the Connétable. Right at the back, please. I beg your pardon.
Deborah Dorleans. Evidence suggests that fixed penalty fines are an effective deterrent to littering of cigarette butts, litter and gum. How do the candidates feel about this?
Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. That's a great question. They're used widely in other parts of the world. They appear to work. I guess as we move towards not carrying cash, they make it more difficult, but the police, I guess, will take their devices to take money off us. I basically agree with them, and I think it's just a pity that the Constables Committee in particular has been a bit of a block on introducing fixed penalty notices. I know that the States of Jersey Police would like them to happen because it would make their work much quicker. It would reduce the amount of paperwork they have to deal with. It would speed up the process of actually, as someone said earlier, making an example of people who break the law. But that needs to be passed by the Assembly, and we need to get a majority of constables to back it. Of course, the reason the constables are not in favour of it is because they worry it will affect the honorary police, and in particular, the parish hall inquiry system, which we all know is the backbone of honorary policing in Jersey. Myself, I don't believe that. I think if you decide that there are a number of fines, particularly littering, which is a real problem in town, if someone drops a cigarette butt or throws it out of their car window and they're seen, they should be fined on the spot. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. And let's hope the new Assembly does something about it. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mark.
Yes, I do have to agree with Simon here. I don't know if any of you have seen my Facebook page. I took a video of the parade gardens underneath all the benches, and the amount of cigarette butts and rubbish that was underneath there that gets left. And also after a night out, the taxi rank was absolutely disgusting. And also outside the bus station. I mean, there was people who were standing, waiting for their bus in absolute filth. It was just horrible. So yes, to your question, I would be in favour of putting on the spot penalty fines. It can be very difficult to police, but I believe in certain times of the day, after nights out and things like that, it should be policed, and then you wouldn't get so much of a problem. But something does have to be done to clean up the streets, so it doesn't put such a burden on the parish cleaners' refuge. Thank you.
Thank you. The 13th question. Peter, you've asked a question already. Can I just check whether anybody else has a question? Fair enough. Peter, would you please ask the next question?
A multi-part question, really. Simon referred to the Cinderella areas of town. The main roads in the north of town, St Saviour's Road, Valplaisant, the like, seem to have been not maintained by Baron Hardup. The Minister for Infrastructure, since we've had this ministerial system, we no longer have the Constable of St Helier on the Public Works Committee, or whatever it's called, and its incarnations it's been through. Can I have the candidates' thoughts on the ministerial system as opposed to the committee system, and any ideas they have about getting these things seen to?
I think the ministerial system is totally rubbish because things just don't get done, and it has to go through so many people and then get up to the top ministers. If you've got a council that deals with such problems like road infrastructure, you know, things should be passed a lot quicker. And this is the same thing as what we're talking about with rejuvenating parts of town. You can use that with the same with roadworks, and I believe really you should have you shouldn't have one person dealing with all that. It should be a collective, a group of people to go through all the areas and then put it to them and say, look, these places need to be sorted out. And that way I think you'd probably get it passed a lot quicker instead of waiting for such a long period of time. Yeah.
Thank you. Simon.
Thank you. That's a cracking question. Our roads in St Helier are like a third world town, quite honestly. And I'm embarrassed when I take people around the Ring Road, for example, in St Saviour. Anyone with a bad back has to go incredibly slowly or they'll be in trouble. Newcut is disgraceful. The tarmac has never been relayed, and we get loads of complaints from people who say, why isn't the parish doing something about Newcut? And I have to say it's because the Minister for Infrastructure is responsible for Newcut, and he will not have it resurfaced, and we've asked that specific question. So does that mean ministerial government doesn't work? I think what it means is that we've got the wrong ministers in post. We've already tried to get rid of ministerial government and it didn't work. A proposition was brought in the last term of office and it failed. It failed by quite a large margin. So I don't think it's realistic to think government is going to change anytime soon. But we have to make sure that the next Minister for Infrastructure really understands the problems in St Helier in terms of cycling and walking, in terms of the state of the roads, which are dreadful, in terms of the lack of investment in our Cinderella districts. And I have said when I've been asked that I won't seek a ministerial term, but I'm afraid if it's going to be another 4 years of Kevin Lewis, then I would certainly stand against him, because I don't think anyone in the Roads Committee could bear another 4 years. Thank you.
Someone else to go. I just had a memory lapse. Apologies. I've completely forgot.
All right, we'll pass it over and then we'll come back to it. Thank you.
Hello. Now, I've heard a lot of lovely suggestions tonight about what needs to be changed, what needs to be improved. I suspect if I was to share that there's lots of youngsters currently running around town causing a bit of a hassle with shops during school holidays, you would both agree that it would be lovely to have more use facilities and all that. Now, what I'm interested in, the cost of living is going up, life for ordinary islanders is getting ever more expensive. With all the lovely plans you have, how are you going to finance that? Thank you.
Is that me first? I think it is. We do get a bit confused here about whose turn it is. That question I thought was going to be about young people offending, but maybe that's going to come later. It's a question about how we pay for all this. And I think that the parish of St Helier can teach the states a lesson. We don't bring in a new tax to pay for things in the parish of St Helier. We set out our books every year for parishioners to come and approve them or not. And we do that well. The states of Jersey brought in GST because they couldn't balance their books. And I liken it to you remember the spend local card that we all had with £100 on it? The government of Jersey has got a spend local card. The trouble is they don't spend it locally very much, and it's not £100 on it, it's £100 million, because that's what GST brings in every year. So I think the answer is the parish of St Helier is fiscally prudent. We do have money in our budget which will be hopefully approved by parishioners, whether it's Mark or myself presenting it on the 6th of July, and that money will go into the kind of improvements we've been talking about. But what the States is going to do is anybody's guess. They may even try and put up GST. I know there's going to be a move to take food off GST. That will happen in the new term of office. But the real problem with GST is it was an unnecessary tax that was brought in to cover the fact that the states simply couldn't manage their budget. Thank you.
Mark.
Yeah, the parish is doing very well fiscally. To the question, I believe, was to do with the youth. I think, how are we going to manage them? I mean, for given stuff to do, I believe we need to give them more youth centres, because unfortunately they've got one down First Tower, which is brand new, and it's a lovely facility. We have one at St James's Art Centre at the St James's Street. There needs to be a purpose-built youth centre for them. I believe the parish would be able to help with that. Where it would be, I'm not 100% sure. We'd need to speak to the youth groups to find out the best place for them, and come up with ideas. But yeah, the parish is in good stead for all this. As Simon said, they balance their books well. So yes, thank you.
Right. Yes, please.
Apologies, I'm getting old. Stephen Beddoe. The new district rationalisation goes a long way to correct voter representation for St Helier, and the none of the above will hopefully prove a godsend, particularly in St Saviour. However, it does highlight one glaring mistake now, is that we see some fantastic candidates in other districts that we can't vote for, and we've got to possibly review again the whole system. Would the candidates support some sort of island-wide mandate, whether we go down the Guernsey model, deputies in districts but voted for by the island, or some other compromise, but an island-wide mandate for politicians, I think, is shown to be needed and wanted. Thank you.
Mark.
This is, on my rounds of canvassing, this has been one of the big questions and concerns that a lot of people have within the parish, and other parishes as well, is exactly the same. They have candidates that they would like, but they are not in their constituents. I myself am in exactly the same boat. So yes, I would definitely like to see an island-wide voting system. I think it's fairer. I think the whole situation of having, just 11 people in some places, or think it's 14, you say, in St Helier. I split over 3 constituents. I think we're going to end up seeing quite a few, none of the above, and there will be re-elections, which I don't think is fair. I think it should be, a group of deputies that everybody can vote for as an island-wide mandate. Thank you.
Simon.
Thank you. I think I almost answered this at the start, but just to recap, really, I think it is probably the biggest cause of dissatisfaction in the current election campaign. Everybody is reporting that on the doorstep people are furious that the system has been changed, and clearly PPC, which I'm a member of, I was a member of, maybe just didn't get the message across to the public when it all went through the states. I remember at the time we were quite surprised it was passed because there was a lot of opposition from the senators in the states to losing the island-wide mandate. But what I would like to see, as I said, is the constable elections a fortnight before the main election for an island-wide member of the states of Jersey. I'm not sure I like the term senator. Why not call us MSJs? That was proposed by Clothier more than 20 years ago. And so constables could stand as a member of the states of Jersey. Most of them would get in, so you would still have the constables in the states, but everybody in the states who voted would have the same mandate as everyone else. I'd also like to see fewer states members. I don't think we need 49. Jersey was run for centuries by 36 states members, and I don't see why we shouldn't go at least some way back towards that. That would certainly save money, and it would actually mean you could pay some states members a little bit more. It is fairly ridiculous that the Chief Minister is paid the same as the newest backbencher who's just been elected. And I think there should be some kind of rearrangement of the finances, but I wouldn't want to see the budget for states members go up. I'd just like to see fewer states members and distribute the money a bit more sensibly. Thank you.
Allowing for the amount of time required for each of our candidates to make their summing up presentation, I'm going to take one more question. Well, I'm looking for anybody who hasn't asked a question yet. I see a hand right at the back. Thank you.
Vanessa Daligo. I'm from St Saviour's, actually.
Sorry, could you repeat your name again?
Vanessa Daligo, St Saviour's. What would the candidates consider removing the clock to a more visual place? It's hidden behind the speaker up there.
Is that a question to
yes,
both
it's
candidates?
A question. Would they consider moving the clock? Because it's hidden behind the speaker and you can't see it from here.
Thank you. Simon.
Well, I have to say that it's never been pointed out before, and I'm very grateful. We will move it. I have to say, though, we are going to be improving the assembly room if the budget is approved by ratepayers, because we've moved over to electric away from oil, and so all of the radiators behind these panels are going to have to come out, and there's going to be an opportunity to actually spend a little bit of money, subject to ratepayers' approval, to make the assembly room more fit for purpose, more compatible with our climate change commitments. And when we do that, if not before, I think we should move the clock. And before anyone else mentions it, we also need a lot more information about the paintings around the hall. We do have a guide to them, but we need to get it online. We need to have QR codes and all that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Mark.
To answer the question, yes, it is in rather a silly place. It should be right above there. But if they are and already have plans in place to rejuvenate, yes, it can be done. It's quite a simple one to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all very much for those questions. I think you've been challenging the two candidates, and to have a question that's never been asked before, excellent. Thank you very much. Could I now ask Simon Crowcroft to make his closing remarks, please? He has 3 minutes.
Thank you. And could I also begin by thanking you for an excellent hustings. I've been to so many hustings, often in Morris's position, chairing hustings, particularly for deputy elections, where there's hardly been any questions about St Helier at all. And it was really refreshing that almost every question was about the parish that we're seeking to represent. I want to use the rest of my 3 minutes to talk about the environment, because it hasn't always been at the top of candidates' agendas, but it really should be, because it's all we have. We're lucky to live in such a beautiful island, but I think some of the decisions made by the states, even though they've pledged to work towards climate change goals, have only been talk rather than walk. And I just want to mention some of the things that we've done while I've been constable. We adopted a climate change emergency proposition tabled by Deputy Rob Ward before the states did that, and we formed a group of interested people to brainstorm how as a parish we could do something about our carbon footprint. And we've already introduced, as I said, turning the town hall fuel supply from oil to electric. We've increased the number of electric vehicles and machinery, and we're also pursuing plastic-free initiatives, though these have had to take a back seat recently during the pandemic for obvious reasons. We've been promoting biodiversity in our parks and gardens for 25 years or more, with a particular focus on planting plants that are good for insect life. And we've recently bought a field on the border of St John at Surville, which will one day provide an extension to our cemetery, but which for now is being used by the Grow Project, a community-based initiative planting fruit trees and other crops to help local people. St Helier was the first parish to trial a food waste collection with composting, and while that trial is yet to be implemented in a parish-wide scheme, we've made a lot of progress with our collection of recyclables. We're the only parish to collect recyclables on a fortnightly basis, and we ship ours to France so we can track how they're treated, whereas the states send all theirs off to the UK and possibly don't know what happens after that. We've worked closely with EV, the local electric vehicle supplier, to introduce alternatives to the private car, and we even carry out the biennial broncage on electric bikes rather than polluting minibuses. So we're working hard on the environment of St Helier, and I would like to carry on doing that as a key part of my work, particularly, as I said before, protecting the green spaces and making sure we increase them. I want to see a country park for St Helier at Warwick Farm if the hospital is not to go there, and that's another project which I'm anxious to pursue if I'm re-elected. Thank you very much for listening to us and for your questions.
Thank you, Mark.
Just want to say thank you. This has been an eye-opener for me regarding questions, as I was expecting a lot of different range of questions, but as Simon said, a lot of them have been about St Helier, which is great. In closing, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who has nominated me for the challenging but yet rewarding role, and to everybody who has attended here this evening. If elected, it would be a great privilege to become father of the parish and to represent the people of St Helier, as people matter most to me. Thank you.
In summing up, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to first of all thank Patrice and Stephen and Dave, who handled the timekeeping and the microphones. I'd also like to thank all of those who asked questions. As I said earlier, very challenging, I think, and I'm very encouraged by listening to the answers. And to all of you who came tonight, didn't necessarily ask questions, who've taken in all of these answers, and I hope it's helped you to decide for whom you're going to cast a vote, and that you all get out and encourages many other people, as you know, to get out and vote on the 22nd of June. That's on Wednesday week. If you haven't voted already, and if you're not going to vote by postal ballot. Thank you to the media again for recording this evening's meeting for newsprint, I think. And finally to Vote.je and all of you who are going to watch this at some point.